Cody Ware was arrested once again. Chase Elliott officially made his return this past weekend at Martinsville, and wet weather tires were used for the first time on ovals in race conditions. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to the video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start by talking about Gainbridge, as we have the first official throwback for the 2023 Throwback race. It's Nick Sanchez's 2023 Throwback scheme to Mario Andretti's 1967 scheme that he won in the Daytona 500. Really exciting stuff. Glad to see we're finally starting to get some throwbacks. I imagine we're getting a lot more throwbacks as we get closer to the Throwback race, which is about a month from now. Overall, I think this throwback looks really good, and Gainbridge did a really awesome job on it, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Napa. Now, Adam Stern put out a basically report around Napa, around Chase Elliott. And they basically said that obviously when you have a Chase Elliott who has won a championship once and is NASCAR's most popular driver, you do miss that. But they're very happy that he is officially back in the Cup car. Obviously, Napa's been a big supporter of Chase Elliott since the 2014 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. So they've been committed to Chase Elliott for a very long time. And are very happy that Chase Elliott is officially back behind the wheel. Overall, really good stuff to hear. Obviously, they missed Chase Elliott being behind the wheel, but nonetheless, I think everyone's happy to see that Chase Elliott was back this weekend. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Jimmie Johnson and Scott Dixon. As it was announced on Friday that Jimmie Johnson and Scott Dixon will be inducted into the 2024 Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. Well-deserved for both drivers. Jimmie Johnson, of course, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and one of the greatest NASCAR drivers, if not the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. Is Scott Dixon, a 6-time IndyCar champion and a legend IndyCar as well. Congratulations to both of them. Well-deserved, my honest opinion, and glad to see that both are getting inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. They absolutely deserve it, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Chip Ganassi. As Bob Poggers put out a tweet on Friday evening, or Saturday evening for that matter, talking about Chip Ganassi. And he says that Chip Ganassi is finishing up the fall of the DC Solar bankruptcy, and he will pay $1,375,000. Obviously, Chip Ganassi was on the Dale Jr. Down this past week, about a week ago, and we talked about that with Chip Ganassi maybe in the future coming back to NASCAR. But Chip Ganassi has to pay quite a bit of money to DC Solar. We'll have to pay $1,375,000 DC Solar. Personally, he shouldn't have to pay any money, but it is what it is overall, and it's a shame that he had to pay money back to DC Solar, company that basically screwed Chip Ganassi Racing over. But nonetheless, he had to pay a ton of money. I think it's a lot of BS, but that's just my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about John Hunter Nemechek. Now, John Hunter Nemechek won the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Martinsville. And very similar happened to Zane Smith during his burnout of Circuit of the Americas. John Hunter Nemechek's car caught fire after winning the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Martinsville. This is a big issue with the mufflers, it seems like, because now, like I said, this is the second time this year where we have seen this problem. With the shorter track and the road course package for both the Xfinity Series and the Cup Racing, and also the Truck Series as well, there's been a big issue with the mufflers. And I do believe they got to figure out a way where I think the mufflers may need to come off, especially in the future, because this is now the second time this has happened. It's kind of screwing these trucks up. We'll have to see if this affects the car overall, but I think this is overall almost a bigger fire than what we saw with Zane Smith. It needs to be resolved going forward, and I think this needs to be resolved quickly, because we don't want to see these trucks catching fire and drivers getting injured because of these issues. So I do hope it gets resolved in the future, because we can't see these trucks and cars continue to catch on fire. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Chase Briscoe. Now, I didn't talk about this much recently, but Chase Briscoe actually had to go to surgery after on his finger. And this morning, his wife, Marissa, put out that Chase Briscoe did have successful surgery, and she asked for continued prayers. Chase Briscoe had surgery on his finger, and it was really quick. I'm surprised they got done with that surgery quickly, and we thought the surgery was going to be last week after Bristol Dirt. Turns out they wanted to wait one more week after Martinsville, and they decided to go ahead and do the surgery now. Chase Briscoe is not expected to miss any races going forward, so good to see the surgery was successful. I hope he can recover really quickly. They're saying about 6 or 7 weeks, but he should be able to continue racing going forward. He suffered a crash at Volunteer Speedway where he had to have surgery, and overall, hopefully they can go really quickly and he can recover as quick as possible. Nonetheless, so he will not miss any races, which I think is positive overall for everybody. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about RC Enerson. as it was announced on Friday that it was officially announced that RC Enerson is going to enter the 2023 Indianapolis 500 with Able Motorsports. This has been rumored for the last few weeks that this was going to end up happening, and now it's official that he is going to enter Indy 500, which means bumping is going to happen in this year's Indy 500. Able Motorsports currently competes at Indy NXT, which used to be Indy Lights, so it's good to see that Indy NXT team is going to jump up and run in IndyCar and try to make the Indy 500 with RC Enerson. RC Enerson, I think, is a decent driver overall. He was able to make it, I think, almost made the Indy 500 a couple years ago with Top Gun Racing, and we've seen RC Enerson show some potential in the past as well. But I think it's really cool that another team's coming into play, which means the Indy 500 course, Indy 500 testing is coming up this weekend, and this team is expected to be at that Indy 500 Open test that's going to be happening here this week. But nonetheless, I'm really happy to hear that RC Enerson was able to enter, and glad to see that he will have a shot at racing Indy 500. The team will be at a little bit of disadvantage compared to other teams. We'll see how fast they are at the test this upcoming week, but glad to see that RC Enerson will enter the 2023 Indianapolis 500 with that team. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kurt Busch. As Adam Stern put out a tweet on Friday evening saying that Kurt Busch was at Circuit Americas for the MotoGP race with one of the organizations. Kurt Busch obviously has got an affiliation with Monster Energy, and I believe the team that he was with was affiliated with Monster Energy. And Kurt Busch, like I said, has a big affiliation. He's had a big affiliation with Monster Energy for a very, very long time. Obviously, Kurt Busch is still not medically cleared to race at the moment, but nonetheless, it's good to see that Kurt Busch is out and enjoying what he wants to do. I really hope in the not-so-distant future, Kurt Busch can get back behind the wheel of a race car. He said he had a full positive update not too long ago, and he's hoping to get back behind the wheel in the future. But I'm glad to see that Kurt Busch is enjoying it. Basically, what's interesting, I think he was wearing an OnlyFans shirt, which is definitely really, really interesting nonetheless to see. But good to see that Kurt Busch was at the Circuit America race and MotoGP, the MotoGP race of the Americas. Good to see he was there, and I'm glad to see that he got to enjoy what he wanted to do in the event. Overall, really exciting stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Kaden Honeycutt. As Kaden Honeycutt on Saturday morning put out a tweet thanking Roper Racing for all the success and everything that they've been able to do, and is hoping to run more races this year with that team in 2023. This past weekend's truck race at Martinsville was the last race that was scheduled for him to run with Roper Racing. And it's a shame because Kaden Honeycutt, in my opinion, has done a really good job this year with Roper Racing, including like last week at Bristol Dirt, where he was really strong in that race, finished ninth, and had some great pace and some great speed overall. And I thought he was going to run really good at Martinsville because he ran good last year at Glory to God Racing. The truck never just was really set up right, but he's been really impressive in the races that he's been able to run this year. He also did make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut with CHK Racing. Unfortunately, they had some issues in that race. I think their car basically blew up. I think something broke in the brakes. Not entirely sure. But something broke in that car and cost him a good shot and opportunity at having a good run. I really think Kaden Honeycutt deserves a full-time opportunity, and I'm just saying he drives with Brad Keselowski's esports racing team with RFK, so maybe, just maybe, we'll see him in the future if Brad Keselowski decides to reopen the Truck Series team, RFK Racing. I'm just saying Kaden Honeycutt would be a great driver to start out with because I think he could contend for a championship. Just saying. Nonetheless, so I think it'd be really fun for him to have an opportunity and a shot. I think Kaden Honeycutt deserves a full-time opportunity with the team, and I really hope he does get a shot at an opportunity of driving full-time with the team in the future because I think he deserves an opportunity, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about racetracks. Now, Adam Stern put out a tweet about racetracks that are making some interesting moves that don't involve the fans. And he put out a tweet basically saying that that includes growing legal marijuana on the surrounding property of Pocono and building a new mixed-use entertainment district outside of the gates of Indianapolis Motor Speedway are among the ideas being molded by track promoters as they seek to make better use of the land. Obviously, there's a lot of land a lot of these racetracks own, and it's interesting, at least for Pocono's sake, that they're talking about growing marijuana on that land. I just find that very interesting. But basically, they may be growing marijuana outside of the racetrack. And again, it's legal marijuana, so it wouldn't be illegal. It'd be legal marijuana. But I just find it very interesting to see that we got racetracks that are coming up with interesting ideas to try to make a little bit more money, but also try to find ways to use the land outside of these racetracks. It's interesting that they're looking at using marijuana, but also for Indianapolis as well. Roger Penske does own the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Roger's been kind of flirting with ideas for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the long-term future and for the track's long-term success. But it's just definitely interesting to see that you got potential legal marijuana being used outside of Pocono. I think that's interesting and very interesting to see that they're doing that. I think that's pretty funny, and I find that a little bit hilarious, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. Now, Bob Poggers put out a tweet on Friday evening, and he says that Kaulig Racing's final appeal for the Lure penalty is going to be this upcoming Tuesday. I don't remember if it's this Tuesday or next Tuesday, but it will be coming up very, very soon in the coming weeks. Obviously, Kaulig Racing lost their initial appeal, and where they basically only got, I think, like 25 of their points back. So they're going to final appeals officer with Bill Moles, and we'll have to see if they go ahead and win their appeal or not. Obviously, Kaulig Racing, not surprising or shocking. They're still part of the old appeals rule. Remember, the new appeals would be that they would not be able to approve it. They would only basically get some of their points back. Because they're part of the old rules, before they change the rules with the appeals, they can still go ahead and win their appeal. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Kaulig Racing if they go ahead and end up winning their appeal. I'm not sure if they're going to win their appeal, sadly, because, again, generally it's kind of a black and white rule with the lures, though. It seems like with Kaulig Racing it's a little bit different because only one of their lures was confiscated, and not like 8 of them were confiscated like Hendrick Motorsports. Only one of the lures was confiscated. I find that very interesting, and it's going to be something we're going to watch as the next couple weeks go on. Nonetheless, though, it's interesting to see, and we'll continue to watch this as time goes on when it becomes to that. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Milwaukee Mile. As there was reported by Adam Stern on Saturday morning and kind of part of his mailbag from Friday evening that IndyCar is continuing having really deep discussions, and it sounds like we're getting close to potential return for the Milwaukee Mile for IndyCar, maybe for the 2024 season. Now, obviously, the NASCAR Truck Series is returning the Milwaukee Mile in 2023 for the first time since the 2009 season. IndyCar has not raced on the Milwaukee Mile since the 2015 season. I believe Sebastian Bourdais won the final race there in 2015. And there's been rumors and rumblings for the last few years that IndyCar has been trying to get back to the Milwaukee Mile. Honestly, I think this would be a really good racetrack return. It's a historic racetrack. Now, there's been some people floating around that they should do a throwback race for Milwaukee. I completely disagree. I don't think you need to have every single race be a throwback race for every form of racing. NASCAR's been using that as a throwback race for a long time. But what's another thing that I really love about the Milwaukee Mile potential turning? It's another oval. IndyCar does not have enough ovals on their schedule right now. There's only been they only have 5 oval races, 2 races at Iowa, 1 race at Texas, 1 race at Gateway, and another race. I can't remember what other track it is, but they don't have a lot of oval tracks on the circuit. So I think overall adding another oval to Indianapolis, of course, but adding Milwaukee to the schedule would really bring a lot more variety to the schedule. And overall, in my opinion, I think the more ovals you add, the better it is going to be. So I really love this. I hope they add more ovals long-term going forward. And I'm glad to see that there's a really good chance that Milwaukee is going to come back to the IndyCar schedule. It's been a long time since they've been on there, so I'm glad to see that they're basically bringing it back potentially next year. And I think it'll be really good for the IndyCar if Milwaukee does make its official return. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Long Beach Grand Prix. Now, yesterday while the NASCAR Cup race was going on at Martinsville, the Kyle Larson went on the way. Congratulations to Kyle Larson. But we had the Long Beach Grand Prix yesterday as well, and Kyle Kirkwood picked up his first career IndyCar victory. Kyle Kirkwood had the best car in that race, had a dominant race, and Romain Grosjean near the end and Marcus Ericsson were charging up to catch Kyle Kirkwood, but unfortunately, they were also saving fuel at the same time, and they had to get to a certain fuel number to make it to the end of the race. Unfortunately, they did not have enough to get by Kyle Kirkwood, and Kyle Kirkwood, like I just mentioned, picked up his first career IndyCar victory. Well-deserved win for Kyle Kirkwood. In 2022, Kyle Kirkwood definitely struggled, but I think a lot of that was due to the age of foot equipment more than anything else. And he's had a couple races where he struggled so far in 2023, but I think Kyle Kirkwood is definitely going to emerge and become a championship contender this year in IndyCar. He had a great race. Obviously, there was some tension behind him that happened. Scott Dixon and Pat O'Ward got into it a little bit, and Scott Dixon was not happy with Pat O'Ward. Pat O'Ward also kind of chirped back after the race. He had some comments that were very interesting to say. He wasn't apologizing to Scott Dixon for the racing out on the racetrack. But nonetheless, going back to Kyle Kirkwood, congratulations to him on picking up his first career IndyCar victory. A well-deserved win nonetheless, and I'm very happy to see that Kyle Kirkwood picked up his first career win. Congratulations to him on getting his first career victory. Well-deserved win. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Ryan Truex. As Ryan Truex basically reported on, I believe, on Friday afternoon, or actually Saturday evening, that he will run the next 4 Xfinity Series races with Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, it's unclear what number he'll be in, but it will likely be with the number 19 car. This is absolutely well-earned and well-deserved, in my opinion. Yes, we'll talk about Ryan Truex here later in this episode with Sam Mayer, but Ryan Truex, I think, has done a really good job outside of this past weekend at Martinsville. He had a second-place finish at Phoenix and finished third at Atlanta Motor Speedway, I believe, or finished in the top 5. And I think Ryan Truex is a very talented driver who's never really had a great shot and a great opportunity. I think Ryan Truex could win one of those upcoming races. I think he always gets the best out of his equipment every time, except Martinsville, of course. But I think that Ryan Truex, like I said, is a very talented driver who always gets the best out of his equipment, and I think he's going to do a really good job with the race that he's able to run. He's done very solid. He's done a really good job, and nonetheless, I'm very happy to say that Ryan Truex is getting the opportunity and a chance to show his potential capabilities because I think he's a great driver. He deserves a shot, deserves an opportunity, and I'm very happy to say that he will get a chance and an opportunity to race once again in NASCAR in Joe Gibbs Racing. A lot more races because he only scheduled, I think, for 6-7 races this year. I think they added maybe more races for him to run, which I think is a great decision. Of course, some of those races are dash or cash races, but nonetheless, very happy to see that Ryan Truex once again is getting the opportunity and a shot to do it. I think he's a really talented driver who deserves the opportunity, and I think he'll do a really good job once again in that car. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sheldon Creed. Now, Sheldon Creed was interviewed by TobyChristie.com after the race and multiple media reporters, and Sheldon Creed, after the race, said that he was frustrated with Kaulig Racing and the lack of respect that Kaulig Racing has shown to Sheldon Creed. Now, it's no secret that Sheldon Creed has been raced really disrespectfully, seems like, by Kaulig Racing. You go back to Circuit Americas about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where Sheldon Creed got turned by AJ Allmendinger while they were battling for the race lead. AJ had the fastest car in the race, and basically was going to eventually pass Sheldon Creed nonetheless, but Sheldon was trying to hold his position, and Sheldon got turned by AJ. And then it seemed like during the Martinsville race, Sheldon was getting raced with a lot of disrespect out on the racetrack, and I think on the last lap of the race, I think he got turned by a Kaulig Racing car, if I'm not mistaken, and went from having a pretty good finish at the end of the race to finishing near the back of the pack. Sheldon Creed, I understand his frustration. I think at some point he's going to have to go kick some ass or do something to Kaulig because he's just has been raced with a lot of disrespect, and he seems to be like a really nice guy. But at some point, he's going to have to show a little bit more disrespect to the drivers out on the racetrack because he's been getting treated with a lot of lack of class and a lot of disrespect. And at some point, things are going to have to change where he's going to have to race with a lot more disrespect out on the racetrack if he's going to get a message across because he can't just keep racing with respect. At some point, he's going to have to start treating these drivers the way he gets treated, and he's been treated with a lot of disrespect in the Xfinity Series. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think he hasn't been able to get the finishes that he deserved. He had a top 5 car, but unfortunately, the lack of respect kind of cost him a good shot at a good run, and it is what it is overall, but I think he's going to have to show a little more disrespect out on the racetrack if he's going to get a message across going forward, because if he doesn't show it, he's not going to get the message across. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Ellis versus Joe Graf Jr. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race on Saturday night, you saw some tension between Ryan Ellis and Joe Graf Jr. About halfway through, a little bit past halfway in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Joe Graf Jr. unfortunately crashed and collected Ryan Ellis, and they had the wreck going into turn number 1. Now, during the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, the Alpha Prime Racing Twitter page, the admins, put out scheduled tweet, which is very interesting to see. Then, Joe Graf Jr. commented and clapped back after on Twitter and basically said, you might want to look at the telemetry and get your vision checked. To me, it looked like when you look at the telemetry does not lie when you look at the telemetry. It shows that Joe Graf basically, I think, got pushed in the corner maybe by Patrick Emmerling and basically sent it in the corner and got up there, which is a shame because Joe Graf Jr. has been gotten a lot of crap for the way he races. And after the race, Ryan Ellis and Joe Graf Jr. had a confrontation and talked after, and they went over and talked after the race. Look, I think a lot of people give Joe Graf Jr. a bad rep, and Joe Graf is, let's be real, has not done a really good job behind the wheel. I'll just be for real on that. But Joe Graf Jr., I don't think was entirely at fault for the situation. Ryan Ellis, though, I think was just an innocent bystander in the situation, very similar situation we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But I don't think that Joe Graf Jr. was completely at fault. I think Ryan Ellis has every right, though, to be frustrated. Ryan was having a pretty decent night, unfortunately, and just I feel like Joe Graf Jr. is kind of underperforms in his equipment. I understand Ryan Ellis' frustration, though. I think Ryan Ellis does feel like the Joe Graf Jr. was at fault for the wreck in the situation. But I'll be honest with you guys, I cannot completely blame Joe Graf. I can't completely blame Joe Graf for the situation. It seemed like maybe Patrick got into the back of him there. But nonetheless, I can understand the frustration there. I understand the frustration. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tony Stewart. Now, Tony Stewart has accomplished basically everything Tony Stewart has gotten into. He has accomplished a lot of stuff. And Tony Stewart did something now that a lot of drivers have not been able to do, as he has now won an NHRA in top alcohol dragster. Tony Stewart competed in the 4-wide salute at 5-wide or 4-wide nationals, and he came across the line and picked up an NHRA win on Sunday afternoon. Massive congratulations to Tony Stewart. What's interesting is that for his own team, he drives for Mick Phillips Racing at NHRA, and now Tony Stewart has accomplished something that a lot of drivers have not done. He's won an IndyCar championship. He's won 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships. He's won as a NASCAR owner, and now Tony Stewart can now say that he is a winner in NHRA. Massive congratulations to Tony Stewart on getting done. That is an incredible accomplishment for Tony Stewart, and I'm very happy to see that Tony Stewart is able to get it done in NHRA. He deserves it. Congratulations to him, and I just wanted to mention that because I think it's incredible to see that Tony Stewart has done a lot of stuff in the sport, accomplished a lot, and I think he absolutely deserves the win. Congratulations to him. He's worked really hard to get it done, and I'm very happy to see that Tony Stewart was able to get it done. Very happy to see that he was able to get the victory. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Sam Mayer versus Ryan Truex. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race on Saturday evening, you saw the issues between Sam Mayer and Ryan Truex. With about 40 laps to go, I believe, in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Ryan Truex completely sends it in the corner going to turn number 1 and completely wipes out Sam Mayer. Unfortunately, collapses an innocent bystander in Riley Herbst, who was running very well in the race, and Sam Mayer is having a pretty good race as well. Ryan Truex just makes a massive mistake and gets into Sam Mayer. After that incident happened, Sam Mayer basically flipped off Ryan Truex by giving him the number 1 finger and walked away, and basically got in his post-race interview, he basically said, I can't say anything bad about JGR driver, said I need to hold it to myself, which is a little bit spicy to see. Now, looking at the incident itself, I think it's no-brainer. Ryan Truex is absolutely at fault for the incident. He completely sent it in the corner and got into Sam Mayer. Now, Ryan Truex basically said on the interview he thought it was really, really funny what Sam Mayer did. But in all seriousness and all honesty, I think that Ryan Truex was completely at fault because not only did he take out Sam Mayer in the incident, but he also took out Riley Herbst, who was having a really strong and a really, really good run. And it's a shame, too, because Sam Mayer was having a pretty good run, and Riley Herbst was contending for their top 10 finish. And that's the second race in a row where Riley Herbst has been taken out in an incident that wasn't even his fault, because Riley Herbst was just sitting there and really not his fault, unfortunately. It's just unfortunate, too, because I think that when you look at Ryan Truex, what he did, we may have a new rivalry on our hands, because remember, Ryan Truex, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, he's going to be on the number 19 car for the next 4 weeks, and maybe we see some tempers flare in the coming weeks. I don't think we see anything at Talladega, but maybe at Dover we see some issues. Maybe later the year at like Kansas or whatever track the Xfinity Series goes to. Maybe Darlington we see some issues between both drivers. Who knows at this particular point, but nonetheless, I think it's a no-brainer. I think Ryan Truex at fault. He should have backed off a little bit, and he clearly didn't, and unfortunately, they had some contact, and it cost both of them having really good runs, and it's a shame because I think both drivers had really strong runs, that being Sam Mayer and Riley Herbst. They both had some issues, and it is unfortunate what ended up happening. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Hocevar. Now, if you watched the NASCAR NASCAR truck race on Friday evening, which was a complete disaster due to the wet weather tire situation that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But the first thing we're talking about, Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar, it's no secret, he's kind of driven like an idiot out on the racetrack at times. And unfortunately, Carson Hocevar displayed his idiocy once again in the truck race at Martinsville. The first incident was between William Sawalich down in turn number 4. Now, I don't know what Carson was doing. He literally brake checked on the corner, something like that, and got into William Sawalich, and William Sawalich nearly hit the inside wall. Now, William had a badass save, had an incredible save going into turn number 1. Pretty awesome if you ask me. But then a little bit later in the race, which actually brought out the last yellow of the race, Carson Hocevar got into Taylor Gray. Basically, there was contact, and basically, he dumps Taylor Gray, has a flat tire maybe, but he comes back down the track and completely wipes out Taylor Gray. And Taylor Gray, I don't think, was happy after the race, and Carson Hocevar says, I had a flat tire. Now, NASCAR would hand out a 2-lap penalty to Carson Hocevar at the time, but still, I think he should have been parked for the rest of the race, which he almost ended up getting parked for the rest of the race because NASCAR decided to end the race a little bit early, which we'll get into why that ended up happening. Now, let's talk about the incident itself and what ended up happening with Carson Hocevar. In my honest opinion, and that was a Denny Hamlin comment as well, saying, what is that kid doing? He actually reiterated his comment saying, I don't know what Carson was doing there. Carson Hocevar, I like him a lot. I think Carson is an incredible talent and has a lot of potential to be successful in the sport. But Carson Hocevar has done a lot of stupid things and some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my entire life as a race fan. And it's frustrating because like I said, I really like him. I think he's a great talent. But he is not going to win championships and win a lot of races if he continues to do dumb stuff like that. He's rivaled people down a straightaway before. He's done a couple times where he's brought out intentional cautions. And it's a shame too because I like it. But in my opinion, because of how many times he's done things like this in the past, I think he should be suspended at least for one race. I think a one-race suspension would be justified, and I think it would be fair. I know that NASCAR is not planning to maybe suspend him or getting more penalties out to him because they penalized him after the race, but I think they should at least 100% penalize him for the incident on the racetrack. I think it would be justified if he got a penalty. I think he deserves a penalty 100%. And in fact, he only got a 2-lap penalty. I don't think it's completely justified. He should have been at least parked. And personally, I think Carson Hocevar, because he's done this in the past, should be suspended. He's done this before. He should get a suspension, and I think it's a suspendable act. I think Carson needs to learn from his mistakes and not make mistakes like that on the racetrack again because they're just stupid, and he should know better because he almost could have gone back up to the racetrack. He's lucky that Taylor Gray didn't come back across the pack and cause like a 15-car pileup because Carson decided to be an idiot out on the racetrack. To me, it's a no-brainer. He should get a pretty massive penalty, and I think it's frustrating to see that he should be getting penalties, and I don't know if he will, but he definitely 100% should be getting a penalty for that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the short track package. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race at Martinsville, you saw some issues with the short track package. Now, personally, I thought the Cup race in Martinsville was pretty good, in my opinion. Well, it was decent, wasn't great, but it was pretty good and a big improvement from the last few races. However, some drivers had some things to say about the short track package. First one being Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin basically said it was impossible to pass in the NASCAR Cup Series race, and he could not pass with his car, and said it was worse than last year. Then Eric Almirola also got interviewed and said everything is too good in this race car, and things need to change. I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian to what Denny Hamlin has said. Now, I don't disagree with Denny Hamlin that it was very, very difficult to pass. Again, I think dirty air is a massive problem with this next-gen car, especially at the shorter ovals. I think dirty air is still a big prevalent issue, and I do agree that the tires are way too good on this car. It took way too long for the tire fall-off to come in. It took like 70 or 80 laps to come in, and that's a big problem. The fact that a driver who had 30-lap older tires or 40-lap older tires can all have drivers on fresh tires, I do think that that is a major, major problem. I think that's the two major key things. And also, I do think that there is too much mechanical grip in these next-gen cars. But I will disagree that it was impossible to pass. Denny Hamlin sure was able to pass for the race lead at one point in the race, was able to pass Chase Briscoe. Kyle Larson made a bunch of passes through the field and could easily pass. Hell, even near the end of the race, Chase Elliott passed 12 or 13 cars, and Mark Truex Jr. passed a ton of cars as well on 4 fresh tires. I do, like I said, I think there are issues, but it was not impossible to pass. But there are things that do need to be fixed with the next-gen car, and I think that they could easily be fixed. One, give more horsepower in these next-gen cars. I think if you had these cars at 750 horsepower, I think that would fix some of the problems. Because when you give these guys a lot more mechanical grip in the corners, because the shifting's a big issue. I've said this for a long time. The shifting at the short tracks is a big problem. But I don't think that this package is always a big issue. I think Martinsville does have some problems. And like I said, I think this was the best race at Martinsville we have seen in the next-gen era. It wasn't great. There are still things that absolutely for sure 100% do need to be fixed. But this race was not terrible. And I think people saying this race is terrible, we always have high expectations for a race like Martinsville. And Martinsville has incredibly high expectations. But at the same token, at the same time, I don't think it was completely terrible. It can definitely be better. And people saying that every type of track it's been worse at, is, come on, it wasn't, we've had this issue with Gen 6 as well. I think short tracks are better with Gen 6. That's just my opinion, but I also think road course may have been better. But I think that there are issues with this car that can easily be fixed. You got to get the mechanical grip away from these cars a little bit, and some things do need to be changed with these next-gen cars. But overall, I don't completely agree with Denny Hamlin's comments, but I understand the frustration. But there are definitely things that need to be fixed with this car, especially because I thought Richmond was a good race. I think it might just be a Martinsville issue because I think Cody was really good, and I think that Richmond was good. I think that there are just the gear ratios and the shifting all stuff is the biggest problem, and I think it does need to be fixed going forward. In my opinion, I hope it does get fixed, but I don't completely agree with Denny Hamlin's comments, but I do respect Denny Hamlin as a driver. I don't disagree with Hamlin on some things, but I don't think it was impossible to pass. But dirty air was extremely prevalent, and that does need to get fixed. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode as we're talking about wet weather tires. Now, in the NASCAR Truck Series race, we've seen wet weather tires run on road courses, but for the first time in NASCAR history, we saw wet weather tires on ovals on Friday night, or so-called wet weather tires out on the racetrack, because we ran the damp weather tires for about 27 laps, and then we basically came back to pit road. Now, the wet weather tires that we ran, or the damp weather tires that we saw in the NASCAR truck race, like I said, ran 27 laps in the race, and then it started raining once again, and NASCAR was basically hesitant to get back on those tires. Kyle Busch commented about this, and basically he said that he would have been fine using them, said it basically was better than the tires we got in the Cup Series field, and drivers even were commenting, like Ryan Preece and Denny Hamlin were commenting after the race as well on that. But Kyle Busch even commented on it as well, saying that we should have continued. We could have easily, for sure, it might be a little heavier rain, we could have absolutely continued running on the wet weather tires, but NASCAR, for our reason, did not budge. And the teams also had to pay out of pocket as well for these tires as well. In this situation, the teams should not have to pay. But let's talk about the point of the wet weather tires. The point, from what I understand, is that they're supposed to run in damp, not like incredibly like dry like puddles and stuff. But what is the point of having wet weather tires if we're not going to use them, or rain tires for that matter? What is the point of using wet weather tires if we're not going to use them in the rain? I understand not using them in the puddles, but we're using them in damp conditions, and it's a waste of time of using it because teams spend a lot of money. And when I talk about wet weather tires, I believe the teams should not have to pay for the wet weather tires. I think it's frustrating to see because teams wasted time, and it was one of the most frustrating races and most unwatchable truck races I've seen, because there was a stat that came out showing that there were only 61 green flag laps and 63 caution flag laps. Over half this race, folks, was run under caution. It's just, what's the point of having it if we're not going to use them at ovals? It's a complete disaster. It's frustrating, and I get the drivers and teams' frustration. Teams were ready to go. They wanted this race to get back going. Teams didn't care if they ran on damp tires. And damp tires seemed to hold up. Yes, there was a lot of basically fall off on the tires, but I think teams and drivers would have been fine of using the damp tires a little bit longer because they ended the race because of rain. It doesn't make any sense. They were running on slick tires when it was sprinkling out on the racetrack. Meanwhile, they were not running wet weather tires when it was raining. Make it make sense. And even Alan Sawyer said, oh, it was successful. No, it was not successful. You guys could easily finish the race on the damn tires. Could have even got a little farther, and I think fans would have been happy. Or maybe we should have just ran the race on Saturday morning. I don't know. Just a thought. Nonetheless, so it was good to see it. I thought it was a cool experiment, and it was cool the first 27 laps. I thought that was fun. But after that, it was just very unwatchable. It was very frustrating to watch, and I can't blame teams and drivers for being upset after the race as well. They were really frustrated about it, and they were upset as well about it. Nonetheless, though, it was interesting. We'll have to see if NASCAR can do a better job on the procedure. They were almost going to use them in the Cup race. They didn't have to do because there was a lot of concern about maybe rain. Luckily, though, they didn't have to use them. But I think as a fan, it was a little bit frustrating to watch overall. Nonetheless, they ran them, and it was a little bit frustrating to watch. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. Now, Chase Elliott made his official return to the NASCAR Cup Series for the first time since the race at Las Vegas. Well, since Auto Club, because he was supposed to race at Vegas but did not race at Vegas. He's been out for the last 6 weeks, and he had a couple guys in for substitution, that being Josh Berry and Jordan Taylor, mostly Josh Berry. Now, Chase Elliott made his return, has some decent speed in practice, kind of struggled throughout the race, but he ended up finishing in 10th in his return. And after the race, he said that his leg was stiff after the race a little bit. He said the leg was stiff because he's not been in a Cup Series car for 6 weeks. He didn't say it because he was in a lot of pain, but he said his leg was stiff because he had not been in a Cup car. He was tired after race because he had not been in a Cup car for 6 weeks. For drivers not been in a Cup car to finish 10th, that's pretty good. And a lot of people were wondering if Chase had been playing conservative. Chase said no, the car was just completely terrible. And I agree. Chase Elliott's car was really bad for the most part throughout the race. In fact, the Hendrick cars outside of maybe Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman were really bad throughout the day. And even Larson struggled at points throughout the day. Now, Kyle Larson did go on to win the Cup race at Martinsville. But after the race, we saw Chase Elliott and his friends, Bubba Wallace and Ryan Blaney, basically coming over to talk to Chase after the race. They're good friends with Chase, both of them are. So they were over there talking to Chase after the race. Now, talking about the expectations for Chase, Chase currently sits 140 points below the cutoff line after, and I have to say Chase Elliott, for a guy who had not been in a Cup car, he did a very solid job. But again, already having a top 10, he should be really happy about that. And if the race would have stayed green for a lot longer, I think Chase could have gotten a better finish, honestly, because his car was really good near the end of the race. It was hooked up, and I think once the sun came out, that car really came into play. I think he had a car that could have finished top 5 had the race, say, had a little bit more of a run, because his car got better as the day went on. It was getting better as the race progressed, but he struggled a lot of day and went almost a lap down at one point. But I think he stayed on the lead lap and got benefited from a caution as well. But I think that Chase Elliott will get better as time goes on. I think he's going to have to take, again, I think it's going to take a little time for Chase Elliott to get used to being back in the car. It happened with Kyle Busch as well. Remember back in 2015, Kyle Busch, he struggled when he got back, and it took him a little bit to get used to the car, but he got his first win at Sonoma about 5 weeks after getting in. That's target for Chase. Can he be good by the time he gets to a track, maybe like not too far down the road, like Darlington maybe? And I think Talladega is going to be interesting to see because he was pretty fast at Talladega. Remember last time we raced at Talladega, he ran a really, really strong and a really good race. He had a fantastic car. And I think Chase Elliott could be strong in Talladega. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know if he's going to push it as hard. I think he's going to hang back just to save himself. But I think he'll survive and have a pretty good day, hopefully. Because, again, I think Chase will have a pretty solid day at Talladega. I think gets top 10 or top 15 and maybe has a good run. But it was nonetheless really good to see Chase Elliott back out on the racetrack. Again, it's good that he basically has been cleared. He's good to go for a long time. We'll see how he feels after, but nonetheless, very happy to see Chase Elliott made his official return to NASCAR, and I think he had a pretty successful return to NASCAR overall. Finishing 10th on his return, I think is very good nonetheless, and happy to see that Chase Elliott had a really awesome return to NASCAR. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Cody Ware once again. Now, we talked about Cody Ware last week because Cody Ware had been arrested. Now, Cody Ware actually had been initially released on bond. However, Cody Ware once again got arrested on Friday morning. And he was arrested once again for additional charges. Apparently, Cody Ware actually turned himself in, and now he has additional charges added to him. So according to the documents that have been released, I think his bond has been increased to maybe about $5,000, and he's required to wear an ankle brace. And apparently, he may have revoked the bond and basically had not followed the rules he was supposed to follow. And according to the new charges that have been added to Cody Ware, from what we hear, he was had assaulted and struck a woman by getting on top of her, pinning her to the bed, and throwing her to the ground several times. There's reports and also rumors that basically may have had a gun at the same time as well. Now, here's the big thing I want to come on and say. There is a thing saying that innocent until proven guilty, but what I just said are charges that have been added. These are additional charges that have been shown because he basically had already a couple charges added. Now he has multiple charges added. Now, apparently, according to documents as well, his first court appearance is supposed to be later today. Again, there is a thing saying innocent until proven guilty. So until we know all the facts come out, and he may get dropped, all these charges dropped, but again, we don't know at this point if those charges are going to get dropped. But I do feel bad for the fans of Cody Ware in this situation because Cody Ware had a lot of fans. And Cody Ware, no secret, has had some issues, but it's no excuse for some of the things that have happened here. If he did do this, this is really bad look for Cody Ware, and he should never get back behind the wheel of a race car once again. I don't think he deserves to be back in a race car if he did it, okay? Remember, I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying he's innocent. I'm just saying right now that I'm just reporting the facts we have. Big question is going to be with this situation, who gets behind the wheel of the race car going for Cody Ware, because I don't think Cody Ware is going to be back behind the wheel, even if he's proven innocent. He's probably never getting back behind the wheel of a race car. I'm just going to say that. So, who gets behind the wheel of the race car for Cody Ware going forward? Zane Smith could get behind the wheel again. Zane Smith, even though it won't be this week, because Zane Smith's going to be in the 38 car this week, so we won't see Zane Smith behind the wheel of that car, so someone else will be in there because Zane Smith's going to be with front row. But I think Zane Smith could make more starts at front row because I think Zane Smith will be in the Cup Series in the 2024 season. Maybe we see Ben Rose get in that car. Ben Rose has had some starts at Ford in the past, has had some Cup starts in the past, and maybe Ben Rose, since it's an off week for the Truck Series, maybe Ben Rose gets some starts. What about Matt Crafton? Matt Crafton drove a Bristol Dirt for the team, and he's known to be a super sub in NASCAR, so maybe Matt Crafton gets a shot and an opportunity. What about another driver like Hailie Deegan, perhaps? Hailie Deegan hasn't made a Cup start yet, but she's got sponsorship funding from companies like Monster Energy. Maybe Rick Ware decides to bring her up. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but what if they bring her up? That could be a potential possibility right there. What about Ty Majeski? Ty Majeski, I think, is a pretty talented and underrated driver, and I think Ty Majeski could do a very, very good job. And I think Ty Majeski would be fun for him to have a shot and an opportunity. I think when you look at that, though, as well, Riley Hurst is going to be in there, so maybe Cole Custer gets a shot as well. Who knows at this point, but it's going to be very interesting what Rick Ware decides to do because Zane Smith's not going to be available this week because he's going to be a front row this week. So we'll have to see what happens in regards to gets behind the wheel, but Cody Ware was once again arrested. More charges have been added. We're just going to have to let all the things play out going forward. I'm disappointed for his fans, though. Feel bad for his fans overall, and it's just an unfortunate situation that has happened right here. So that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on so you know if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below for that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are your thoughts about the Cody Ware situation? Let me know in the comments below. And are you happy that Chase Elliott is officially back? Let me know in the comments below. Later today on the channel, I should have the NASCAR Xfinity Series race picks for Talladega. Then on Tuesday, we're going to have the NASCAR Cup Series race picks for Talladega, followed by another special video potentially on the channel as well. Then on Wednesday, we're going to have a NASCAR news video on the channel, maybe a paint scheme video coming out as well. And then Thursday, I might have a silly season update dropping on the channel. Make sure to tune into that. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.